The weight in your shoulders softens as the day finally lets go. You can feel the slow, steady rhythm of your own breath, gently carrying away the tension in your hands and your jaw. The evening air is pleasantly cool against the warmth of the linen. Here, in this quiet space, there is nothing left to solve. The world outside slowly fades. Aristotle enters the story. He is not a distant monument or a name carved into cold stone. He is simply a man sitting in the soft lamplight, feeling the faint texture of the world around him. History remembers him as the mind that shaped an empire, the man who taught the young Alexander of Macedon. Yet their paths were profoundly different. While Alexander would become known for crossing borders, Aristotle spent his life quietly crossing from one question to another. His journey was inward. He listens first. He watches the simple things, the fragile curve of a shell, the behavior of animals, the slow turning of the stars, the nature of friendships, the forms of governments, and the quiet habits of the human mind. His story will unfold patiently, without any urgency. We will follow his unhurried steps from the salt-scented coastal town of Stagira down the long roads to Plato's academy. We will drift along the shores of Lesbos, rest quietly in the gardens of Mieza, walk the shaded paths of the Lyceum, and finally seek rest on the quieter island of Euboea. There is no rush to arrive anywhere. For now, the long years of his life are still ahead. The journey begins long ago, on a shoreline fading gently into dusk. The cool sea breeze brushes past. Before he has words for all the vast mysteries of the universe, he is only a young boy. He stands near the edge of the water, noticing the endless rhythm of the tide, quietly listening to the natural world. The year is 384 BCE, but the numbers do not matter to the tide. We begin in Stagira, a small Greek settlement resting quietly on the edge of the Chalcidic Peninsula. The landscape here is framed by wooded hills that roll gently downward to meet the vast blue expanse of the northern sea. The air is always thick with the scent of sea salt and the faint, earthy fragrance of wild brush. Fishing boats bob patiently in the harbor, their wooden hulls worn smooth by the constant rhythm of the waves. Cultivated fields stretch inland, pale green and gold beneath the open sky, while distant mountains stand as silent watchers on the horizon. It is a place of slow, natural rhythms where the rising and setting of the sun govern the labor of the day. Young Aristotle spends his early days surrounded by this gentle pace. He is a boy immersed in the quiet sounds of the natural world. He hears the distant, rhythmic chiming of goat bells drifting down from the hillsides. He feels the cool coastal wind slipping through the olive trees, carrying the warmth of the sun-baked earth. The world is an endless open room of things to discover. He walks along the shoreline, the warm dust soft beneath his feet, and stops to look at the scattered stones and fragments washed up by the tide. He picks up a smooth shell. He traces its ridges with his thumb. He watches how the light catches the water trapped inside. He studies it quietly, and then he gently sets it back down on the sand. His home is filled with a different kind of quiet discovery. His father, Nicomachus, is a man of science and observation. He serves as a physician, a trusted healer with connections extending to the distant Macedonian royal court. But in the quiet rooms of their home in Stagira, he is simply a father, surrounded by the tools of his trade. The house smells faintly of crushed, aromatic herbs and dried leaves used for healing. Wooden medical boxes sit neatly on the tables, containing small tools, carefully measured powders, and the gathered wisdom of generations. The young boy watches his father work. He learns to look closely. Through his father, Aristotle begins to understand that the body has its own quiet logic, its own patterns of health and change. He sees how certain plants can soothe a fever and how the careful application of a remedy can bring comfort to someone in pain. He observes the animals around their home, noticing the way they move, the way they feed, and the way they rest when the day grows hot. The world is not just a collection of random events. There is an order to it, a hidden structure waiting to be seen by anyone willing to look carefully enough. The boy watches the smooth motion of a bird taking flight. He wonders how its wings catch the unseen air. Within the walls of their home, there is also the gentle presence of his mother, Phaestus. She brings a quieter, grounding rhythm to his early childhood. Her world is the domestic space, the steady hum of daily life that turns a house into a shelter. There are shared meals at a wooden table, the soft glow of oil lamps lit as the evening shadows stretch across the floor, and the quiet conversations that close the day. Her family has deep roots in this part of the world, and her presence offers the young boy a profound sense of belonging. The days pass gently. The warmth of the hearth matches the warmth of the afternoon sun, but the seasons change, and the passage of time brings its own quiet shifts to the boy's life. While he is still young, the gentle structure of his childhood is altered. Both of his parents pass away, leaving behind the sunlit rooms and the aromatic herbs of his father's practice. The sorrow is a quiet one, a natural closing of a chapter that happens earlier than anyone might have wished. There is no sudden drama, only the soft turning of a page in the slow history of a life. The loss is tucked away in the quiet corners of his memory, softened by the passage of time and the enduring rhythm of the world around him. He is not left entirely alone. Care of the boy falls to Proxenus of Atarneus, a guardian who steps softly into the role of protector. Proxenus ensures that the rhythm of the young man's life continues without harsh disruption. The home is different, the walls are new, but his education carries on. Aristotle is encouraged to keep reading, to keep learning, and to keep walking along the shores of his own curiosity. Under this gentle guardianship, the boy discovers something profound. He learns that when the world feels unfamiliar or unanchored, the simple act of careful observation can make it feel understandable again. Whenever he feels the weight of absence, he turns his attention outward. He looks at a leaf, noting the intricate network of veins carrying life from the stem to the tip. He looks at a drop of water, resting perfectly round on a smooth stone. He begins to develop a habit that will accompany him for the rest of his life. He asks quiet questions. He wonders what things are made of. He wonders how a seed transforms into a heavy, fruit-bearing tree. He wonders what purpose each small part of nature seems to serve. The world is a vast, interconnected puzzle, and he is content to simply sit with the pieces. He walks back down to the edge of the water. The sea salt is heavy in the air. He kneels on the damp earth and picks up a small weathered stone. He turns it over, feeling the way the ocean has smoothed its rough edges over countless years. He sets it down and picks up a fragment of driftwood, observing the grain of the wood, the memory of the tree it once was. He returns it to the shore. He picks up a smooth shell. He holds it lightly in the palm of his hand. He is learning to listen to the world, letting it speak in its own unhurried time. The afternoon stretches out into a long, golden calm. The water rolls gently over the sand, retreating and returning in an endless breathing rhythm. The boy stands near the water's edge. He holds the shell, turning it slowly in his hand. Time moves forward, gently carrying the boy into the early years of young adulthood. He is perhaps 17 or 18 years old when the familiar shores of the northern sea begin to recede behind him. It is time to leave Stagira. The decision is made quietly, a natural next step in the unfolding of a life that asks for more than the coastal tides can offer. He travels south, toward a city whose name holds the weight of history and the promise of deeper thought. Athens is waiting, but the journey is not swift, nor is it meant to be. Ancient travel is a slow, methodical process, measured not in hours, but in the steady rhythm of footsteps and the slow turning of the sun across the wide sky. The physical length of the road becomes a spacious, open room for reflection. There is another road, winding gently through dry hills and sweeping, sunlit valleys. His sandals tread softly on the packed earth, leaving a faint, temporary trail in the warm dust that settles silently behind him. The landscape shifts gradually, day by quiet day. He rests in peaceful places as the afternoon heat reaches its peak, finding welcome shade beneath the sprawling branches of ancient trees. The skies change overhead, transitioning from the pale, salty blue of the north to the deeper, resonant hues of the southern horizon. He listens to unfamiliar voices in the small towns he passes through, gathering fragments of the world piece by piece. There is no urgency to arrive. Every mile is just another road, another quiet observation to store safely away in his growing mind. When he finally arrives in Athens, he steps into a city that is already deeply old with memory. It is a place of endless argument, of grand theater, of careful craft, and of long political conversations echoing across the sun-drenched public squares. But the young man from Stagira does not linger in the noisy, crowded heart of the city. He seeks something much quieter. He makes his way softly to the outskirts, moving far beyond the busiest streets, until he reaches a sanctuary surrounded by groves of trees and winding, shaded walking paths. This is the Academy, founded by Plato. It is not a rigid school built of cold stone and harsh discipline. It is a peaceful, open gathering place, sheltered by silver-green olive leaves that shimmer gently in the late afternoon breeze. Aristotle crosses the threshold as an outsider, a young man from the northern provinces still carrying the faint scent of the sea in his memory. Yet within these sun-warmed walls, he quickly finds a gentle sanctuary for his restless mind. He enters an intellectual community where mathematics, ethics, politics, astronomy, and the careful study of language are all woven together into a single, vast tapestry of understanding. The nature of reality itself is discussed softly under the shade of the protective trees. He realizes with a quiet sense of comfort that he is no longer alone in his wandering curiosity. Here, there is always another question to explore, and always a thoughtful companion willing to walk alongside him while he asks it. Gradually, he becomes an intricate part of the Academy's daily rhythm. The days settle gracefully into a comforting, predictable pattern. There are patient routines of reading slowly from brittle, honey-colored scrolls of papyrus, listening attentively to older scholars, and softly questioning the ideas that seem incomplete. He spends long, quiet hours carefully copying texts, the faint, rhythmic scratching of a stylus on a wax tablet blending seamlessly with the murmur of distant, low voices. It is a life built entirely on gentle repetitions. He sits peacefully on shaded benches as the morning warms, watching the slow play of light across the ground. Cool water is poured slowly from clay pitchers into simple cups, offering soft refreshment in the still, heavy afternoon heat. At the center of this sheltered world is Plato, a thinker whose name is already a firm pillar of philosophy. Aristotle observes him with the same careful, unhurried attention he once gave to the washed-up shells on the northern beach. He develops a deep, abiding respect for the older teacher. Plato's mind is a vast architecture of brilliant ideas, always pointing upward toward perfect forms and eternal, unchanging truths. Aristotle listens quietly. He learns, but he also begins to notice how his own thoughts move differently, drawn downward to the earth. He still feels the strong pull of the physical world, the tangible, undeniable weight of leaves, animals, and stones. Yet there is no conflict in this quiet difference of perspective. It is simply another path of inquiry, opening slowly before him like a shaded walkway. In the quiet, breathing spaces between long conversations, Aristotle learns a profound lesson about the nature of human thought. He learns the vital difference between seeking quick, absolute answers and learning to remain peacefully beside a difficult question. The world does not need to be solved all at once. It is enough to sit quietly with the mystery. It is enough to trace the complex shape of an idea over time. Just as he once traced the smooth ridges of a shell, he learns to let his questions breathe, trusting completely that understanding will come in its own unhurried, natural time. Whenever the mind grows tired from searching, there is always another quiet afternoon to rest, to gather strength, and to softly begin again. The sun slowly begins to lower over the quiet olive groves. The long, stretching shadows of the trees reach gently across the packed earth of the winding walking paths. The day's learning is peacefully done, not because everything in the vast universe has been answered, but simply because the body and the mind know it is time to rest. The low, thoughtful voices of the students and teachers begin to fade gradually into the cooling, fragrant air. The delicate papyrus scrolls are gently rolled and tied. The wax tablets are put away, carefully stacked in the fading, golden light. Aristotle walks slowly back to his small quarters, his mind quietly humming with the calm rhythm of the day. The evening settles softly over the academy. The stars begin to appear above the branches, slow and constant. Time moves differently in the quiet sanctuary of the academy. The seasons turn slowly in the silver-green olive groves, blending years into decades without the harsh interruption of urgency. Aristotle remains in this peaceful, sheltered community for roughly 20 years. It is a long, unhurried chapter of his life. The academy is not a modern school with rigid schedules, strict examinations, or heavy doors that close at a certain hour. It is a living, breathing place. It is a shared life of thought, anchored by deep friendships and the steady, comforting repetition of daily routines. The days are woven together by the gentle rhythm of shared inquiry. There are simple meals of bread, olives, and watered wine shared at wooden tables. There are long, slow walks together under the warming afternoon sun. They sit peacefully on shaded stone benches as the heat of the day settles deep into the earth. Low, thoughtful conversations murmur through the groves, blending with the gentle rustle of dry leaves overhead. Sometimes, a student draws geometric figures in the pale dust with a smooth wooden stick. The intersecting lines are studied quietly, debated in soft voices, and then left behind, eventually swept away by the evening breeze. The world here feels perfectly contained. At the center of this intellectual family is Plato. His presence is a profound and guiding light, shaping the way Aristotle first learns to ask about the nature of truth, goodness, and knowledge. Plato teaches him to seek justice and to wonder about the proper organization of a human life. Aristotle listens with deep, abiding reverence. He absorbs the wisdom of the older man, yet, as the years drift by, like clouds passing slowly over the Athenian hills, a quiet, respectful distance begins to open between the teacher and the maturing student. It is not a sudden break. It is simply the natural divergence of two brilliant minds looking at the same vast universe. Plato's thoughts naturally lift upward. He believes that the truest reality exists far beyond the physical world, in a distant, unseen realm of perfect, unchanging forms. For Plato, the trees, the stones, and the animals around them are only pale shadows of a higher, eternal perfection. But Aristotle feels the steady, reassuring pull of the earth. He wants to know the world exactly as it appears to his own senses. Plato looked toward the perfect pattern. Aristotle looked toward the particular thing. This difference in vision brings no conflict to the quiet groves. It is merely a shifting of the gaze. Where Plato looks up, Aristotle looks closely at what is right in front of him. He desires to begin with particular living things, tangible objects, everyday actions, and human experiences. If he wishes to understand what makes a tree, he does not look to an invisible, perfect form of a tree. He looks at the rough bark beneath his fingers. He looks at the root digging firmly into the soil. He watches how the leaves turn slowly toward the morning sun. He collects examples. Before forming any grand conclusions, Aristotle learns to wait. He develops a patient, methodical way of understanding the natural world. He gathers careful observations, accumulating them slowly over the years. He pays careful attention to definitions, realizing that clarity brings a deep sense of peace. He begins to gently place the world into neat, understandable categories. He separates plants from animals, and the elements of the earth from the stars in the sky. He seeks the underlying causes of things, wondering how a seed eventually becomes a flower. He organizes the scattered pieces of existence, smoothing out the unknown until it feels familiar and safe. His mind desires order. He studies the quiet, internal structure of an argument. He observes how human thought moves, how one idea gracefully leads to another, and how a valid conclusion must naturally follow from the statements that came before it. This is the gentle birth of logic. He notices how language can beautifully reveal our thoughts, but also how easily it can confuse them. He works patiently to unknot these confusions. He untangles the threads of human reasoning with the slow, deliberate care of a master weaver working at a loom. 20 years is a long time to walk the same winding, shaded paths. The young man from the northern coast gradually becomes one of the central pillars of the academy. The rolled, honey-colored manuscripts of his early days are now joined by heavy stacks of his own careful notes. But the peaceful rhythm of the place remains beautifully unchanged. The morning light still filters softly through the olive branches. The afternoons are still wide and open for thought. The evening shadows beneath the trees still stretch long and cool across the dry, packed earth. Friendships deepen. The conversations echo with 20 years of familiar warmth. In the year 347 BCE, this long, sheltered chapter comes to a quiet close. Plato, having lived a full and monumental life, passes away. There is no dramatic rupture in the fabric of the days. It is simply the gentle, inevitable end of a very long afternoon. A profound stillness settles over the groves of the academy. The loss is felt deeply, yet softly, cushioned by the enduring weight of all the years they had shared. The transition is as natural as the turning of the season. Aristotle mourns his teacher with a calm, abiding respect. Standing in the quiet spaces of the academy, he recognizes a comforting truth about the nature of learning. He realizes that deep gratitude toward a teacher does not require permanent agreement. He will carry Plato's profound influence with him for the rest of his life, even as his own footsteps begin to lead him down a different road. The bond between them remains unbroken by their philosophical differences. Love and respect endure, even when the mind must travel on its own. The sun slowly begins to set over the Athenian hills. The familiar paths of the academy are growing quiet as the evening air cools. Aristotle walks alone for a moment, letting the gentle twilight settle softly around his shoulders. He looks toward the familiar stone bench where they had spent so many hours in unhurried, peaceful conversation. The seat is empty now. A soft breeze stirs the branches above. The dry leaves move gently, casting shifting, peaceful shadows over the empty place where an older teacher once sat. With the passing of Plato, the invisible ties that had anchored Aristotle to the academy begin to gently loosen. It is time to travel again. He leaves the familiar, sun-baked streets of Athens behind him, turning his face eastward toward the deep, shimmering waters of the Aegean Sea. The journey is slow and entirely unhurried. He watches the changing shapes of the islands as the boat drifts steadily across the water. The sea breeze carries the promise of a different kind of life. He eventually arrives in the city of Assos, located on the rugged coast of Asia Minor. Here, he finds a new, quieter sanctuary under the welcoming protection of a man named Hermias. Hermias is a ruler of the region, but he is also a former student of philosophy. He understands the quiet, enduring value of a life spent in careful thought. In Assos, a small, close-knit circle of thinkers naturally gathers far away from the busy, crowded debates of Athens. It is a peaceful time, filled with the simple, steady work of observing and understanding. The days pass gently. It is also here that Aristotle's life expands in a deeply personal and comforting way. He marries a woman named Pythias, who is closely related to Hermias. Their life together is woven smoothly from the quiet threads of daily domestic companionship. There are shared meals in cool, shaded rooms as the midday heat settles outside. There are quiet walks along fragrant garden paths in the late afternoon. There is the simple, reassuring presence of another person resting nearby while he reads. Behind the immense, growing structure of his philosophical thought, there is always the ordinary human warmth of a peaceful home. Eventually, the slow rhythm of his life carries him across a narrow, quiet stretch of water to the nearby island of Lesbos. The landscape here is softer, edged by calm coastal waters and beautifully sheltered lagoons. He does not come to this island alone. He is joined by a man named Theophrastus, a brilliant and thoughtful companion who will remain one of his closest friends for the rest of his life. Together, they gladly step away from the abstract, airy arguments of the city. They walk down to the damp, salt-scented edges of the sea. The shallow lagoons of Lesbos become an endless, open-air place of patient study. The water is perfectly clear, revealing a hidden, silent world beneath the surface. Aristotle rolls up the edge of his tunic and kneels quietly in the cool, shallow seawater. He observes the world with a patient, untiring eye. The water moves gently around his ankles. He watches the swift, silver flash of fish moving gracefully through the swaying seagrass. He watches how they breathe, how they feed, and how they navigate the shifting currents. He studies the fragile, intricate wings of coastal insects resting on the damp reeds. He reaches down into the wet stones and gently turns over small shells, examining the complex, hidden architecture safely tucked inside. He and Theophrastus look closely at the plants growing bravely along the sandy shoreline. They observe how the roots hold firmly to the loose earth, how the leaves change color as the weather shifts, and how they patiently reproduce when the season is right. Aristotle talks quietly with the people who know this water best. He spends long, unhurried hours listening to the local fishermen as they sit peacefully mending their heavy nets in the morning sun. He talks to the farmers working the salty coastal soil and the men who quietly tend to the animals in the nearby hills. He learns that wisdom does not only reside in carefully rolled papyrus scrolls, it is also held deeply in the calloused hands of those who work the earth and sail the sea. Through these quiet conversations and endless hours by the water, Aristotle learns another gentle lesson. He realizes that understanding the natural world is a slow, inherently imperfect process. Sometimes an observation is incomplete. Sometimes a long-held conclusion must be gently set aside when a new piece of evidence washes up on the shore. He does not view this natural uncertainty as a failure. He accepts it quietly. The world is incredibly vast, and human sight is always limited. It is enough to simply keep looking. It is enough to patiently revise an idea, allowing knowledge to grow as slowly and naturally as a tree taking root beside the sea. Even in this peaceful coastal retreat, the distant world occasionally intrudes upon the quiet. Word eventually reaches the island that his friend and protector, Hermias, has passed away. The grief is deep, but it is held softly at a distance. Aristotle remembers his friend with quiet honor, acknowledging the sorrow that inevitably comes to every human life. Yet, in the very midst of this quiet loss, life continues its gentle forward motion. A daughter is born to him, and Pythias. They name her Pythias after her mother. The small house on the island is filled with the soft new sounds of an infant. The endless cycle of life unfolds right in front of him, as undeniable and constant as the evening tide. The early morning mist rises slowly off the surface of the lagoon. The faint scent of wild thyme drifts down gently from the nearby hills, mixing perfectly with the salt of the sea. Aristotle walks alone along the wet stones near the water's edge. The world is entirely still. He stops and kneels in the damp sand. He reaches out and picks up a small white feather resting delicately on a bed of wet seagrass. He holds it in the palm of his hand for a long moment, marveling quietly at its perfect, lightweight design. He sets it gently back down on the earth. A small wooden boat rests near the shore. The tide moves in and out, almost imperceptibly, rocking the boat softly against the soft sand. The water enters and leaves the lagoon in a slow, steady breath. The quiet rhythms of island life are eventually interrupted, but softly. An invitation arrives from the north, sent by Philip II of Macedon. Aristotle is asked to return to the region of his childhood. He is no longer the young boy who wandered the shores of Stagira, picking up shells in the damp sand. He is a mature philosopher called upon to educate the king's son, Alexander. He travels back to the familiar landscapes of his youth, settling in a place called Mieza. The setting is deeply peaceful, carefully chosen for reflection. There are shaded limestone walks that cool the midday air. There are deep, natural caves offering a quiet retreat from the sun. There is the constant, soothing sound of running water, slipping endlessly over smooth, ancient rocks. Alexander is not yet the sweeping conqueror who will eventually reshape the borders of the known world. Here, in the quiet, sheltered gardens of Mieza, he is simply a young student. He carries expectations that are already much larger than his years, an invisible weight placed upon his shoulders by his father and his lineage. But the garden provides a gentle sanctuary from the heavy demands of the royal court. Other young Macedonian nobles study alongside him, their low voices blending naturally with the rustling of leaves. You can hear the distant, rhythmic sounds of horses resting in the afternoon shade. They are boys standing unknowingly on the edge of history, but for now, they are anchored safely in the slow, patient work of learning. The days are built on long, unhurried conversations, teacher and students do not sit rigidly in a closed, heavy room. They walk gently along the shaded pathways, letting the steady movement of their bodies aid the quiet movement of their thoughts. Aristotle introduces them slowly to the vast landscape of human knowledge. They speak of poetry and ethics, politics and medicine, geography and the careful observation of the natural world. They open heavy leather scroll cases to read the sweeping stories of Greek literature. They read Homer. The ancient verses of heroes, honor, and human frailty fill the quiet air. The stories settle deeply into the minds of the young nobles as the warm sunlight filters softly through the thick canopy of the trees. Aristotle does not just teach practical facts or recite distant history. He encourages a careful, daily attention to character. As they walk near the running water, he speaks quietly about self-command. He talks about the enduring, quiet value of true friendship and the heavy responsibility that naturally comes with holding power. He asks the young prince to deeply consider the natural consequences of his actions. They talk about what makes a human life genuinely good and what kind of leadership brings lasting stability rather than fleeting, destructive glory. The lessons are thoughtful and beautifully grounded, always returning to the practical, sometimes difficult realities of human nature. He listens patiently. He gently guides the restless energy of the young men toward deeper, calmer reflection. Behind the famous names remembered by history, there's a very quiet, ordinary human reality to these years. There are long, tired afternoons when the heavy, warm air makes studying difficult. There are complex passages of text that must be gently corrected, and ideas that take a very long time to fully grasp. There are simple weather interruptions, when an unexpected cooling rain sends them walking quickly to seek the dry shelter of the caves. There are unfinished discussions, left softly suspended in the twilight air as the day naturally draws to a close. There is the sweet smell of ripe figs warming in the sun. There is the comforting, steady routine of returning to the exact same shaded bench, morning after quiet morning. As the seasons turn slowly over the limestone paths, a quiet truth settles over the garden. Aristotle understands the profound natural limits of his own influence. Education can shape a growing mind, but it cannot dictate the shape of a life. He can patiently provide the tools for careful thought, but the ultimate choices belong entirely to the boy. He understands that a teacher may offer a question. A student must carry it. He can point a steady finger toward the rewarding path of virtue, but he cannot walk it for another person. A teacher may offer a question. A student must carry it. He watches the young prince grow taller, knowing that the wider, demanding world is already waiting patiently for him. Eventually, the quiet, shaded walks of Mieza can no longer contain the pulling tide of the future. Alexander's formal education gently comes to an end as he moves steadily toward his waiting military and royal responsibilities. The young nobles depart, taking the quiet lessons of the garden out into the vast, unpredictable expanse of a rapidly changing empire. Aristotle's role slowly shifts. He is no longer the daily guide for a future king. He remains behind as the muffled sounds of armor and departing horses slowly fade into the distance, leaving only the quiet of the natural world. The transition is profoundly natural, accepted with the calm, steady understanding of a man who knows that all seasons eventually turn. The garden returns beautifully to its original, unbroken stillness. The leather scroll cases are packed softly away. The eager voices of the young men are gone, gracefully replaced by the gentle hum of insects and the soft stirring of the wind in the old branches. Aristotle walks the familiar limestone paths one last time, letting the deep peace of the place wash over him. The afternoon sunlight shifts gracefully across the empty stone benches. The shadows lengthen across the grass. The garden is quietly empty after the students have gone, while the water continues to move patiently through the stones. The long roads of the ancient world carry him forward once more. It is around the year 35 BCE when Aristotle returns to the familiar, sun-baked landscape of Athens. He is no longer the young, wandering student who first arrived from the northern coast. He is a man in the full, steady current of his mature years. The city has changed, and so has he. But the enduring desire to understand the world remains perfectly intact. He does not return to the quiet groves of Plato's academy. Instead, he finds a new sanctuary. He settles in a public space near the sanctuary of Apollo Lyceus. This peaceful gathering place is filled with ancient, deep-rooted trees and the comforting geometry of stone columns. It will eventually become known simply as the Lyceum. The Lyceum is not a rigid institution built on strict rules or silent halls. It is a breathing, active community. It is a shared workshop of patient thought. Men gather here not just to listen, but to look closely at the world together. The air is warm and filled with the gentle, rhythmic hum of cicadas hidden in the high branches. Aristotle understands that a single mind cannot possibly gather all the scattered fragments of the universe, so he builds a community of observation. Students and friends work side by side, gathering immense, quiet mountains of knowledge. They collect observations about the physical world, the habits of distant animals, the shifting borders of empires, and the written constitutions of different cities. The quiet rooms of the Lyceum are slowly filled with the physical weight of human learning. Heavy wooden shelves line the walls, smelling faintly of cedar and dry earth. They are stacked beautifully with rolled manuscripts. You can feel the rough woven texture of the papyrus fibers beneath your hands. You can see the dark, carefully measured lines of ink settling securely into the page. There is a deep, profound comfort in this quiet organization. Aristotle is a man who loves to place things in their proper order. Yet, he teaches his students a gentle, forgiving lesson about knowledge. He tells them that not all fields of study work in exactly the same way. The strict, unbending rules of mathematics cannot be applied to the complex, shifting nature of human behavior. The mind must adapt softly to whatever it is trying to understand. The defining rhythm of the Lyceum is the sound of measured footsteps. Aristotle rarely stands still when he speaks. He prefers to think while in motion. He walks slowly along the shaded, covered walkways, accompanied by his closest students. The steady pace of a walk, the gentle exchange of ideas, the quiet search for truth. This rhythmic movement becomes deeply tied to his name, eventually known as the peripatetic way of learning. The physical act of walking perfectly mirrors the forward, unhurried motion of a mind at work. There is a footstep, a thought, and a breath. The body moves, the air cools, and the conversation flows. They walk back and forth under the sheltering columns, their voices murmuring like a slow, steady stream over smooth stones. Each step lands softly on the earth. Each sentence builds gently upon the last. The rhythm becomes a kind of meditation, naturally easing any tension in the mind. The days at the Lyceum fall into a comforting, predictable routine. In the quiet, early hours of the morning, when the pale light is just beginning to warm the stone, Aristotle gathers with his most advanced students. They walk together, discussing deep, complex questions about logic, nature, and the hidden structures of reality. These are hours of intense, focused reflection. But as the day stretches out and the sun moves lower in the sky, the gates are opened wider. The afternoon discussions are softer, more accessible, and open to anyone willing to listen. They speak of poetry, of friendship, of how to live a genuinely good life. The profound and the practical are balanced perfectly, day after quiet day. Beside him on many of these shaded walks is Theophrastus. Their friendship has survived the passing of decades and the crossing of seas. Theophrastus works closely with his older friend, sharing the immense labor of organizing the world. While Aristotle looks deeply at the animals and the stars, Theophrastus turns his patient gaze toward the quiet life of plants. They are a partnership built entirely on mutual respect and a shared, endless curiosity. The work is divided gently among the students. One explores the history of music. Another catalogs the medical practices of distant towns. They are all pulling together on the same vast and visible net, bringing a harvest of knowledge safely to the shore. Beyond the columns and the scrolls, there is also the quiet warmth of Aristotle's private household. His home provides a soft, grounding anchor to the sweeping heights of his philosophical work. He shares his life now with a woman named Hercules. Her presence brings a deep, enduring comfort to his later years. Together, they have a son, whom they name Nicomachus, in gentle memory of Aristotle's own father. The household is a place of simple, daily rhythms. There is the soft glow of clay lamps lit at dusk, their small flames casting warm, steady shadows on the smooth walls. There is the sound of water being poured for an evening meal. There is the quiet, unspoken bond of a family resting safely together as the night settles over the city. He watches his young son grow, seeing the same endless curiosity in the boy's eyes that he once carried as a child on the northern shores. The life of a philosopher is ultimately built on these small, ordinary moments. The grand ideas are simply reflections of a life lived patiently, day by day. He divides his time smoothly between teaching, writing, engaging in deep conversation, and sitting quietly with his family. There is no rush to finish everything. The vast, interconnected web of the world will never be completely understood, and that is perfectly all right. The joy is entirely in the gathering. The satisfaction is found in the gentle act of walking, thinking, and sharing the journey with those around him. The late afternoon sun dips softly below the horizon, casting a warm golden light across the Lyceum. The day's learning has come to a peaceful, natural close. The wooden shelves are organized, the delicate scrolls are safely stored, and the heavy doors to the reading rooms are gently closed. The low hum of the cicadas seems to grow louder in the cooling evening air. The students begin to depart slowly, their footsteps and low voices fading gradually down the dusty roads leading back to the city. Aristotle does not leave immediately. He lingers in the quiet space. He walks slowly along one of the shaded paths, his hands clasped loosely behind his back. The shadows of the ancient trees stretch across the ground. The world is calm, orderly, and perfectly still. As the years unfold gracefully at the Lyceum, Aristotle's mind quietly gathers the vast, scattered pieces of the world. His wide range of study is never a frantic race to accumulate absolute knowledge. It is simply the natural, unhurried extension of a profound curiosity. He wishes to understand everything he can see, and everything he can see, feel. He begins by examining the very tools of human thought. He studies logic with the patient, steady care of a craftsman holding a newly made instrument. He observes how an argument is built, how one idea gracefully supports another, and how the mind can arrive safely at a valid conclusion. It is a peaceful, deeply comforting process of bringing order to confusion, clearing a gentle path through the dense forest of human reasoning. With his mind beautifully organized, he turns his gaze outward to the physical world. Physics, in this ancient time, is not a dry collection of numbers and rigid formulas. It is the careful, poetic study of motion, change, and the passage of time. Aristotle sits quietly in the shaded gardens, watching the natural world alter and grow. He observes how a heavy stone falls naturally to the earth, how smoke rises softly into the evening air, and how the seasons turn in an endless, reliable circle. He learns that nature does nothing without a reason. Everything is moving slowly toward its own quiet fulfillment. He studies the concept of time itself, viewing it as a steady, flowing river that carries all living things forward on its gentle current. He looks even deeper, searching for the hidden, foundational principles of existence. This quiet search becomes known as metaphysics. He wants to understand what it means for something simply to be. He develops a beautifully structured way of looking at the world around him. He places a single, ordinary object on the wooden table before him. Perhaps it is a smooth, clay bowl. He sits in the soft, wavering lamplight and asks 4 quiet questions about it. First, he asks what it is made of, feeling the cool, rough earth of the clay. Second, he asks about its form, tracing the wide, open curve of its design. Third, he asks what brought it into being, imagining the steady, knowing hands of the potter. Finally, he asks what its purpose is, knowing it was made to hold water, to offer nourishment, to serve a gentle end. One object rests on a table, while he asks 4 quiet questions about it. These 4 questions become his gentle way of anchoring the vast mysteries of the universe. His attention shifts fluidly to the vibrant, breathing world of biology. He remembers his days on the shores of Lesbos, kneeling softly in the damp sand. He brings that same patient observation to the Lyceum. He examines the delicate, hidden organs of animals, noting the steady rhythm of their hearts and the slow expansion of their lungs. He studies how they build their homes, how they protect their young, and how they navigate the shifting landscapes of their natural habitats. He makes mistakes, naturally limited by the simple tools of his time and the inherited assumptions of his era. But he accepts these limitations with a calm, forgiving grace. The goal is not immediate perfection. The goal is simply to look closer, to honor the natural world by paying it careful, unbroken attention. When the sun sets and the Lyceum grows dark, he looks upward. Astronomy calls to him in the deep silence of the night. He studies the massive, ancient structure of the cosmos, believing the stars and planets move in perfect, eternal circles. The night sky is a vast, quiet ceiling of beautiful order, offering a profound sense of peace to anyone willing to look up. Then, he brings his focus back down to the human body, exploring psychology in its oldest, most fundamental sense. For Aristotle, psychology is the study of life itself, the animating force that breathes energy into physical matter. He gently distinguishes the different capacities of living things. He observes how plants grow and take nourishment in deep silence. He watches how animals move and perceive the world around them. He studies how human beings carry the unique, beautiful capacity to reason. Beneath all these vast categories of knowledge, there is a single, recurring thought that warms his philosophy. Aristotle firmly believes that all human understanding begins with wonder. It is not driven by anxiety, nor is it fueled by an urgent need to control the natural world. It is born from the simple, profound awe of standing beneath a starry sky or holding a perfectly formed shell in the palm of your hand. Wonder is the soft spark that ignites the mind. It is a gentle, open invitation to listen to the world. He teaches his students that to be a philosopher is simply to retain the wide, quiet curiosity of a child while carrying the patient, steady endurance of a mature mind. The legacy he builds in these years is not recorded in polished, heavily bound books intended for a distant, unknown audience. The manuscripts associated with Aristotle are entirely different. They are the living, breathing materials of a teacher. They are thick stacks of careful notes, written softly on fibrous papyrus. You can almost see the dark ink settling securely into the woven fibers of the page. They are meant to be read aloud, to be discussed in the warm afternoon air, and to be revised when a better thought arrives. They are working documents, carrying the faint, human smudges of daily use and the gentle wear of countless hands. Smooth stones sit on the wooden tables, used as simple paperweights to keep the scrolls from unrolling in the evening breeze. The Lyceum is completely quiet now. The long day of teaching and observing has naturally come to an end. Aristotle sits alone at his wooden table. The night insects begin their slow, rhythmic song beyond the open doorway, their soft voices blending with the cool air. He looks down at a stack of notes, the ink newly dried upon the page. A small clay lamp burns low beside the manuscript, casting a warm, flickering light across the rough texture of the table. He does not need to finish every thought tonight. The world will still be here tomorrow, waiting patiently to be understood. He sets his writing tools aside. The inquiry pauses gracefully. The lamp is low, and the unfinished page rests quietly in the dark. As Aristotle looks up from the physical world of plants and stars, he turns his quiet attention inward. He begins to study the familiar, everyday landscape of human life. He does not seek abstract, impossible perfection. He asks a very practical question. He wonders what allows a human being to truly flourish. His ethical thought is not a rigid list of rules or harsh punishments. It is a gentle, guiding light, offering a steady path through the complex and sometimes confusing terrain of our daily choices. He centers his philosophy on a concept known as eudaimonia. It is a beautiful word, often translated simply as happiness. But for Aristotle, eudaimonia is not a passing feeling. It is not the fleeting joy of a single afternoon, nor is it a temporary release from sorrow. It is the deep, enduring satisfaction of living and acting well across a complete life. He understands that living well is an art, and like any art, it requires patient, steady practice. A musician does not learn to play the lyre by simply reading about it. They must hold the instrument. They must feel the tension of the strings and listen to the notes. In the exact same way, Aristotle believes that virtue does not appear within us fully formed. It is cultivated slowly, shaped by the gentle repetition of our actions. We become brave by doing brave things. We become kind by acting kindly. It is a comforting thought because it means that goodness is always within our reach. It is built in the quiet moments of our daily routines. One choice, then another. One day, then another. To guide these choices, he introduces the idea of the golden mean. It is a beautiful, calming concept of balance. It is not a simple, mathematical midpoint rigidly applied to every situation. Instead, it is the delicate balance that is appropriate to the unique circumstances of the moment. He observed that human virtues naturally rest between two extremes. Courage, for instance, is a steady position, resting safely between reckless danger and excessive fear. Generosity finds its quiet home between wasteful giving and fearful hoarding. Patience, truthfulness, and a good temper are all gentle habits refined through steady experience. They require practical wisdom, the thoughtful ability to judge exactly what a particular moment requires. The mind learns to adjust, softly and carefully, finding its center of gravity. Perhaps the warmest and most comforting part of Aristotle's ethical writing is his deep exploration of friendship. He knows that a truly good life is never lived entirely alone. Humans are naturally drawn together, seeking the quiet shelter of shared company. He observes that we form different kinds of bonds. There are friendships of usefulness, where people help one another navigate the practical demands of the world. There are friendships of pleasure, born from shared laughter and easy, light-hearted moments. But the highest form of friendship is based on enduring mutual character. This is the rare, profound connection where two people genuinely wish for the good of the other. They act as quiet mirrors for one another, reflecting the best parts of their souls. These deep friendships are the soft anchors of a well-lived life. They are felt in the simplest of moments. There is the quiet breaking of shared bread at a wooden table. There is the slow pouring of watered wine into simple clay cups. There are long, unhurried conversations in quiet courtyards where voices are softened by the distance of the cooling evening. In the presence of a true friend, the heavy weight of the world is gently divided. Aristotle teaches that to be a good friend is one of the highest moral achievements a person can reach. It requires the steady practice of all the other virtues: patience, honesty, generosity, and an open, willing heart. Because we are drawn together, Aristotle also believes that the community naturally shapes our possibilities. We are naturally political beings meant to live in cooperative societies. The organization of a city matters deeply because it provides the soil in which human lives can safely grow. He looks closely at how different governments function, always searching for the structures that best support human flourishing. Yet, his vision of the world carries the historical boundaries of his time. His writing includes exclusions and assumptions that reflect the deeply unequal society in which he lived. He did not see past all the limitations of the ancient world, but we can acknowledge these historical constraints softly, recognizing them as the distant boundaries of his era without losing the enduring warmth of his search for a good life. Alongside the active life of politics and friendship, Aristotle leaves room for the deep, quiet fulfillment of contemplation. He believes that the highest capacity of the human mind is the simple, uninterrupted observation of truth. It is the peaceful act of understanding for its own sake. It is the joy of sitting quietly in the shade of an old tree, thinking deeply about the vastness of the universe. Yet, this contemplative life does not erase the need for ordinary relationships and daily responsibilities. They walk hand in hand. The practical and the profound are perfectly balanced. He also understands that human emotion needs a safe place to breathe. He turns his careful eye toward poetry and tragedy, observing how stories gently shape our minds. He sees that watching a tragic play is not a destructive experience. It is a form of emotional release. By safely experiencing pity and fear through the lives of characters on a stage, the audience's own emotions are beautifully cleansed and restored to a peaceful balance. He studies the art of recognition, the careful pacing of a narrative, and the shaping of a complete, meaningful story. He knows that art helps us process the difficult, unresolved edges of our own lives. The Lyceum is closing for the night. The heavy scrolls are put away. The discussions about virtue, balance, and the organization of the city have naturally paused. Aristotle and a companion step out from beneath the stone columns. They walk slowly down the dusty, familiar roads of the city. The evening air is pleasantly cool, carrying the faint scent of olive trees and distant hearth fires. They draw their folded cloaks softly around their shoulders. The city is settling into a quiet, rhythmic calm. Household lamps begin to flicker gently in the windows they pass. They are two friends walking home in unhurried conversation, their voices blending softly with the evening as the day slowly gives way to the night. The distant world is moving quickly, but the Lyceum remains firmly anchored in its quiet, deliberate routines. Alexander, the young student who once walked the shaded limestone paths of Mieza, is now a sweeping force moving across the vast continent of Asia. But the news of his military campaigns arrives very slowly. It travels across ancient, dusty roads and vast stretches of deep blue water before it finally reaches the shaded walkways of Athens. With the news come fascinating reports of distant places. There are long, detailed letters describing unfamiliar animals, strange plants with heavy leaves, and deep rivers flowing through changing landscapes. Aristotle receives these fragments of a wider world, taking them in with his usual patient curiosity. He adds them quietly to the growing mountains of knowledge safely stored in his reading rooms. The connection between the aging teacher and the distant king naturally changes as the years drift by. They are separated by thousands of miles and by the entirely different shapes their lives have taken. It is impossible to know perfectly how much the philosopher approved or opposed the specific decisions made by his former student. The historical record is fragmented, leaving us with only pieces of the story, much like a beautiful vase with parts missing in the sand. But the loud noise of the expanding empire remains far away. The clash of armor and the shifting of borders do not interrupt the gentle hum of the cicadas in the trees. He remains focused on the slow, steady turning of the natural world, far removed from the ambitions of kings. Aristotle continues his quiet work of teaching. He observes the world. Time brings its own gentle shifts within the walls of his private home. At an uncertain point in his mature years, his wife Pythias passes away. As with many things in the ancient world, the specific details are softened by the profound distance of history. But the loss is woven naturally into the continuing fabric of his life. He remembers her deeply, honoring her memory through the enduring, protective care of their daughter. The household does not fall into permanent shadow. It gently adjusts, carrying the deep, profound continuity of a family. He shares his later years with Herpellus, who brings a warm, comforting presence to the quiet evening of his life. He watches his young son Nicomachus grow taller with the turning of each season. The simple, domestic routines of breaking bread and lighting lamps at dusk provide a reassuring anchor. They remain perfectly constant, even as the world outside continues to shift. The warmth of the hearth fire offers a steady comfort when the political winds begin to blow. In the year 323 BCE, the vast, expanding map of the empire comes to a quiet, unexpected pause. The word arrives from Babylon that Alexander has died. The young king leaves behind a monumental legacy, but also a deeply uncertain future. The ripples of his passing travel slowly across the water, eventually reaching the familiar shores of Greece. In Athens, the political atmosphere begins to change subtly. The city is filled with a rising tide of anti-Macedonian feeling. Aristotle, with his northern roots and his distant history with the royal court, becomes a natural focus for this quiet unrest. An accusation of impiety is gently directed toward him. It is an echo of political tensions rather than a genuine reflection of his thoughtful philosophy. Decades earlier, the city of Athens had faced a remarkably similar moment. It had turned against an older philosopher named Socrates, leading to a profound and tragic end. Aristotle observes the shifting mood of the city with a calm, experienced eye. He has no desire for a public confrontation. He has spent his entire life seeking clarity, balance, and the golden mean. He understands exactly what the present moment requires. He is said to have remarked that he would not allow Athens to commit a second offense against philosophy. It is not a loud, theatrical declaration. It is simply a calm, mature recognition that his time in the city has naturally come to an end. There is no rushed escape in the middle of the night. There is only a quiet, deliberate packing of his belongings. The heavy wooden shelves of the Lyceum are slowly cleared. The delicate papyrus scrolls are rolled tightly and placed carefully into protective leather cases. Folded documents are secured softly with linen threads. The quiet schoolroom, where so many years of patient thought had safely gathered, is gradually returned to its original stillness. The heavy wooden doors are gently closed. Aristotle trusts that the work will continue. His devoted friend Theophrastus will remain, tending to the knowledge they have gathered together. The philosophy does not reside in the stone walls, but in the enduring minds of those who learn to ask questions. Aristotle walks the dusty roads of Athens one last time. He walks past the ancient olive trees, past the familiar stone columns, and down toward the waiting harbor. The pale morning light is just beginning to warm the stone streets. The city sounds are still muted, wrapped peacefully in the quiet fog of the early hour. He looks back at the city where he has studied, taught, and walked for so much of his long life. It is a peaceful gaze, holding deep gratitude for the years and a quiet acceptance of the ending. The city remains behind. There is no lingering bitterness, only the natural turning of another page. He steps onto a small wooden boat waiting calmly at the edge of the harbor. The heavy harbor ropes are untied, sliding softly against the ancient stone pier. The wooden oars enter the dark water with a rhythmic, steady splash. The boat pulls slowly away from the familiar coastline. The rhythmic sound of the oars and the gentle rocking of the water bring a deep, enduring sense of peace. He is returning to the landscape of his ancestors, moving toward the quieter shores of the island of Euboea. He watches the coastline of mainland Greece slowly fade into the morning mist. The horizon widens gracefully. The water level is perfectly calm. The shore grows beautifully quiet behind him. The small wooden boat carrying Aristotle arrives safely on the island of Euboea, in the coastal city of Chalcis. This is not a strange or foreign land to the aging philosopher. His mother's family had deep roots in this soil. The landscape around him gently returns the story to the familiar, comforting elements of his earliest days. The air smells strongly of sea salt and dried earth. The horizons are no longer the vast, expanding borders of an ambitious empire, but the small, peaceful outlines of a quiet coastal town. He settles softly into a shaded house near the water. The daily rhythms here are beautifully slow, measured only by the rising sun and the gentle turning of the evening tide. The year is 322 BCE. Aristotle is now roughly 62 years old. Time has gently taken its natural toll on his physical frame. His health begins to slowly decline, but this process is not marked by sudden fear or anxious struggle. It is simply the natural, quiet winding down of a physical body that has worked, studied, and walked for many long decades. He faces this twilight with the exact same calm observation and patient acceptance he brought to the rest of his life. He rests softly in the cool, shaded rooms of the house, listening to the distant, rhythmic sound of the water washing over the smooth stones. Knowing that his time is naturally drawing to a close, he turns his quiet attention away from philosophy and toward the people he loves. He dictates his final wishes with deep care. His will is not a formal document of grand philosophical statements. It is a quiet, beautiful testament to his enduring human affection. He ensures that Hercules is generously provided for, remembering her warm companionship. He makes careful, protective arrangements for his daughter, his young son, his extended family, and the faithful dependents of his household. He leaves nothing unresolved. Every practical matter is softly set in order, smoothed out like the surface of calm water. In the quiet sanctuary of this coastal home, his life comes to a peaceful end. The breath that carried so many deep questions softly leaves his body. But the end of a single life is never the end of the thought. Back in the sun-baked city of Athens, the familiar footfalls continue. Theophrastus walks the shaded paths of the Lyceum, tending patiently to the vast garden of knowledge they planted together. The work carries on seamlessly, moving gracefully forward with the gentle rhythm they always shared. The conversation simply continues with a new voice. The physical manuscripts he leaves behind will eventually travel on a long, astonishing journey. Over the coming centuries, they will be quietly copied onto new parchment by devoted scholars. They will be translated into unfamiliar languages, lost in the shadows of history, and beautifully rediscovered by distant generations. His enormous influence will shape the foundation of human thought, and yet, some of his specific observations will eventually be gently corrected by the passage of time. That is exactly as it should be. He never demanded perfect, eternal answers. His greatest legacy is not a monument of absolute facts, but a deeply rooted habit of asking beautifully organized questions. He leaves behind an open, endless invitation to simply look closer at the natural world. History remembers him as a towering pillar of ancient philosophy. But in the fading moments of the story, we do not need to hold on to his greatness. We can gently let go of the heavy weight of his intellect. We can simply remember the young boy standing alone on the northern shore. We remember the smooth shell resting lightly in the palm of his hand. We remember the delicate green plants, the lightweight feather resting on the wet sand, and the slowly changing surface of the calm water. It all began with a quiet sense of wonder, and it all ends beautifully in peace. The names of ancient people begin to softly fade from the mind. The bustling cities, the shaded schools, the long dusty roads, and the old empires slowly drift away into the dark. The historical dates no longer matter. The heavy papyrus scrolls are rolled tightly and tied securely with linen thread. The wooden shelves are entirely empty. The distant past is safely stored away, and the present moment is all that remains. You are here, resting comfortably in the deep quiet of your own space. The air in the room is perfectly still. You can feel the steady, comforting support beneath your body, holding you completely safe and secure. The tension is entirely gone from your hands, your shoulders, and your thoughts. You notice the slow, reliable rhythm of your own breathing. The air moves gently in, and it moves softly out. There is nowhere else you need to be. The world outside has gone entirely quiet. The night has fully settled over the land. All the vast mysteries of the universe can wait until tomorrow. The mind is perfectly calm. The lamp is low, the air is cool, and the questions rest beside you.